I'd love to dive into a piece of that story about how it all started and where you were in your life at that point.
Well, I was very depressed, clinically depressed, and almost a decade, more or less. I don't know. It was hard, and I was lying on the floor one morning, just in a dead sleep, and a cockroach crawled over my foot, and I opened my eyes, and all the suffering was gone, all the depression was gone, and I saw in that moment that when I believed my thoughts, I suffered. And when I didn't believe them, and that's what that moment showed me, there was no suffering. And that was the difference between suffering and no suffering. So I've come to see that this is true for every human being. When we believe our thoughts, we suffer. When we don't believe our thoughts, we don't suffer. And I'm talking about the thoughts that go against the heart. And when we're in touch with our true nature, which is what my work's all about, this interview, everything I do, it's about just passing on to others that there is a simple way, and it's a practice I call the work, and it's inquiry, and a great mind said that an unquestioned mind is not worth living. And I've come to see that this is absolutely true. I think it was Socrates. But in my experience and the experience of millions of people, it's really so. We question what we believe, or we have to live out of that. And if we're suffering, we can actually identify what we're thinking and believing and question it.
And this is what I think is so beautiful about the work, is it's so simple and it's so profound. And part of what I wanted to really dive into with you, I recently heard you speaking, a recording of you, I think back from 2015, and you were talking into an experience you had where you were entering into the prison system and having these conversations with some men in the prison system. And you said that it had been years since you'd left the world of duality, and it had been years since you'd actually had a negative thought. And what I wanted to sort of dive in, that was really profound for me, because I have been living with a belief that we cannot control the thoughts that enter our mind, but we can create the space to question them and choose something more empowering. But I wanted you to maybe clarify what you mean, like how do we get to a point where we don't even have the negative thought to question?
Well,
if I've understood it right.
Well, actually, the work is meditation. It's a practice. And I invite people, to this daily practice, whereas we identify those thoughts that are so depressing or enemy-making and sad-making, and we question them. And I really don't recall your question. Could you isolate it?
Of course. So I wanted to know, so I have a perspective of, or I have had that, where it's
the trick is, if I can go back a moment from what I heard from you, I can respond this way. It's not about getting rid of my thoughts. It's about understanding my thoughts. Because if I don't understand my thoughts, I can't understand people in my world, my children, my grandchildren, my husband, myself. So if I question those thoughts, they lose their power. And actually, let's say if I had the thought, this is very radical. I don't know if I can go here or not, but
go for it.
Well, it would be like this person doesn't care about me. If I had that thought, then that's not depressing, because I've questioned it. I have an understanding within me. So I would celebrate that person is thinking for themselves. They have a right to their own conclusions. They have a right to believe what they think. They don't know me. So it's not about me. If they believe they don't like me, for example, that's about them and what they're believing about me. So that is not personal with me. So if someone says, I don't like you at all, then I stay connected. I don't separate from that person. I understand. So they don't care about me ceases to be a thought in my head that I even want to get rid of, because it ceases to be a negative experience. So that is a very profound way to live out of life, where the only thing in this world that can hurt me is what I'm thinking and believing about me, about you, about my world. So that gives me 100% control and responsibility for my world, for my life, for me. And I can tell you it's a much kinder world, because I know what hell is. I came out of that 10-year spiral by some state of grace, and I didn't ask for it. Maybe I did, because I was screaming at some point, "Take me home." And on that floor, I received a great gift. And because I pass it on, it continues to expand my mind, this wonderful mind. I have a new book coming out this month or next month. Anyway, it's on my website. People can go to Amazon and find it. What I'm describing really is a mind at home in itself. And that's the name of the book, A Mind at Home with Itself. And it doesn't, that is a mind that is no longer at war with itself. So to understand what you think is peace, and to understand what you think is to understand what everyone says in a way that doesn't separate me. It's a fearless state of mind and a fearless life, as far as I know, and I'm very open to whatever life brings, but so far so good.
Yeah. And I absolutely, I'm really taking all of this in and just feeling into it, and it's already expanding my mind as well. And I love that. And
well, there's no prohibition. There's no prohibition in it. There's no wall. There's nothing to do except take our problems to paper and question them. And of course, directions for that are on thework.com, and it's free. And anyone can do this if their mind is open to it.
Definitely. And something that just popped into my mind was really asking you about identity, because I hear from what you're saying is that ability to disidentify from our thoughts, and that is what creates that freedom, so that we're not triggered, we're not at war with the people in our lives, ourselves, and all things. And I wondered what, because I'm just trying to get my mind around it, that whole concept of what, like, how do you see yourself? If we don't identify with, our thoughts, which is our kind of consciousness, then what is our identity?
Well, we're not left with much, and we're left with a lot. Because if my husband says, "I love you," then what he's thinking believing about me is the person I am to him. So my children the same, my friends the same, people in my life the same. What they're thinking and believing about me becomes my identity within them. And if they don't care about me, that would be painful. If they do, and because the me isn't personal. And if they do care about me, that is a wonderful thing. It's the ability to care, and again, not personal with me. But all my identities are held as a separate structure for everyone that knows me. So why would I bother with identity when I have so many? It's like I'm unnecessary as far as creating an identity, because there's so many out there. Now, if someone says, Katie, you hurt my feelings, I immediately would say, oh my goodness, let's discuss that. I don't want that in my life. I don't want to hurt anyone's feelings, so tell me specifically. So we could talk that through, and that grows me, because if I have said or done something to cause another person harm, they wake me up to it. And in that, I'm aware of what I was not aware of prior to that. So there's no one in this world that does not serve my this beautiful mind to expand, this mind at home in itself to expand. But it really is no identity necessary. But if I look, sweetheart, if I look to it's like this morning I was sitting in the home, sitting in the kitchen with Stephen, my husband, and I see that in my mind's eye. You probably saw me in the kitchen with my husband just then, and you didn't even have to meet my husband, but you can see an image of my kitchen, and you've never seen my kitchen, but you were there. So when I see that in my mind's eye, when I'm discussing that with you, I look at, that's not my identity. That is an image of, that is an image. It's not real. So I am the one speaking to you here now, and that's all the identity I need to hold. When a mind is at home with itself, no identity is necessary. It is just wide open to everything, because that's what love is. It's an experience. And so anything that would interfere with that, in my life, I question it. And I invite the world to that, because suffering is optional.
Wow, I love that. And, something that sort of came to mind there, was really a question around being intentional. So could I, if we question our thoughts and we don't identify with our thoughts, and we ultimately want to stay open to the experience of everything that happens in this moment without identifying with it, and that ultimately is love, then how do we decide when to be more intentional? Is it outside, in terms of
living that way is nothing I could do. It's nothing that I could decide or do. It's what I'm left with. It's the consciousness I'm left with, the enlightenment I'm left with after inquiry. So this is not something I could control. This is not something, again, that I could do. It's something that it's the way my mind works after inquiry, all the inquiry that I've done in my life. And, just sitting in that practice of awareness until finally, not just me, but a lot of people, it's ongoing, because the inquiry is alive in them. The practice is alive in them. And it's not just sitting in the mornings meditating on, he betrayed me, is it true?
So would you say that the inquiry is a way of being?
It's, we're all being. It's just, are we happy in it? Now, the thing you may be looking for, that I'm sensing, is how can we have a better life, a more creative, fabulous life? Every time we question our mind, it's like less space junk is out of the way. This fake news, in other words, the things we find that are not true for each of us individually, ourself, the one inquiring. But when we start, it clears the head full of junk, full of fake news. And in that, the choices we make are brilliant. They come out of knowledge and pure creativity, and they're doable. They're not beyond us. And the directions are all there. That's knowledge. But all these things we're thinking and believing that create the false self, I, me, I, is the clutter that keeps us from the awareness of all that knowledge that is always there. So through inquiry, our choices become clearer. And I have come to see beyond a doubt that this universe is friendly, and wisdom wouldn't take me. Wisdom's so clear you don't even have to second guess it. Wisdom is wisdom, but it's how to give it enough space to reveal itself to us, because it's ready. It's just waiting for an open mind, and I can certainly attest to that. My life does.
Oh, and I love the concept of the false self. Would you say that that's what people refer to as the ego and just the chatter?
Yeah, the ego.
The unquestioned thought?
Yeah, the ego.
Yeah.
And what we're believing creates the ego. So when we question what we're believing, it sheds its skin like a snake, only at a much quicker rate, and it just leaves us enlightened to what is true and what is not for ourselves. This is personal work.
And I really I love that you said that you've come to believe that you've come to experience that it is a friendly universe. And when you speak into that, do you mean, because so many of us are suffering because we're so attached to these memories and these projections of our past and how bad that was, and it's this projection. And do you mean to say that we can find the positivity in that, or do you mean to say that it no longer exists?
Well, what I mean to say by that, I think that is really, really valuable. It's just to identify what we were thinking and believing in those situations that just haunt us, and to write them down and to just get quiet and sit in the practice.